The arrogant ascendancy. The Luminari had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their massive crystalline vessels sailed through the cosmos like luminescent jellyfish, beautiful and terrible in their ancient majesty. The ascendancy, as they called their domain, spanned 17,000 star systems and encompassed over 200 sentient species. Their rule was absolute, their wisdom considered beyond question. High Ambassador Zyark stood before the viewing portal of the diplomatic vessel Radiant Truth, his scaled azure skin reflecting the light of the small blue-green world they approached. For a being who had witnessed the birth and death of stars, this insignificant planet hardly seemed worthy of personal attention. But the Oversight Committee had insisted after the preliminary scouts returned with troubling reports. "Fascinating," his adjutant Narala murmured, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence as she studied the data streams. "They've only achieved faster-than-light travel 73 years ago, yet they've already colonized 18 systems." Zyark's mouth ridge twitched in what his species considered amusement. Expansion without wisdom, like children running through a garden without appreciating the blooms. "They've rejected 3 contact attempts from our emissaries," Narala continued. "Most unusual." "Unusual indeed," Zyarks agreed. "But ultimately irrelevant. All species eventually recognize the benefits of ascendancy protection. These humans will be no different." The Radiant Truth continued its approach toward Earth, its crystalline structure pulsing with energy that had been harnessed from the quantum substrate of reality itself. The ship was as much a demonstration of luminary superiority as it was a diplomatic vessel. "Ambassador," the communications specialist called, "the humans have established a perimeter around their planet. They're requesting identification and purpose." Zyarks's ridge flattened against his skull in irritation. "Send the standard greeting protocol. Inform them we come to welcome them into the embrace of the Luminari ascendancy." Moments passed as the message was transmitted. The response was immediate. "Luminari vessel, maintain your position. Approach beyond designated coordinates will be considered hostile action." The command center fell silent. For millennia, no species had dared to dictate terms to the Luminari. "Show me their defensive line," Zyarks ordered. The viewing portal shifted, revealing a formation of human vessels. They were angular, utilitarian constructs of metal and composite materials, lacking the organic beauty of Luminari design. But there were many of them, arranged in a precise formation that suggested military discipline. "Primitive vessels," Zyarks noted dismissively. "Continue approach. They must understand that the ascendancy does not request permission." The Radiant Truth glided forward, its propulsion systems barely registering in the electromagnetic spectrum. The first warning came not as a communication, but as a kinetic projectile that streaked past their bow, missing by a calculated distance. "They fired upon us," Narala gasped, her lower eyes widening in shock. "A primitive display," Zyark said calmly, though he felt the unfamiliar sensation of uncertainty creeping into his mind. "Open communications. I will address these humans directly." The viewing portal transformed, revealing the face of a human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair pulled back severely from a face that showed the marks of age. Strange that they would put an elder in command. "I am Admiral Ileana Frost of the United Earth Defense Force," she said without preamble. "Your vessel has violated sovereign space despite clear warnings. Withdraw immediately." Zyarks drew himself up to his full height, his scaled skin shifting to a deeper blue to project authority. "I am High Ambassador Zyarks of the Luminari Ascendancy. We have come to offer your species the protection and guidance of the most ancient civilization in the galaxy. Your primitive displays are unnecessary and inappropriate." Admiral Frost's expression remained impassive. "The people of Earth have not requested nor accepted membership in any interstellar political entity. We remain sovereign and independent until our government decides otherwise." "Perhaps you misunderstand," Zyark said, his voice resonating with the harmonics that usually soothed lesser beings. "The Ascendancy is not offering a choice. We are conferring an honor. All technological species eventually join us. Resistance is typically effective against those who underestimate humanity, Frost interrupted, her voice cold. Final warning, Ambassador. Withdraw to designated coordinates. Xerxes' patience evaporated. 12,000 years of unchallenged authority did not breed tolerance for defiance. Perhaps a demonstration will help clarify your position in the cosmic hierarchy. He gestured to his weapons officer. Disable their command vessel. Minimal energy, non-destructive. The Radiant Truth's primary emitter charged, targeting the human flagship. A concentrated beam of quantum disruption energy lanced out, energy that should have rendered the target's systems inoperative. Instead, the beam dissipated against an invisible barrier surrounding the human vessel. Impossible, Nirala whispered. They have quantum shielding. The human vessels began to move with practiced precision, taking up positions that surrounded the Luminari ship. Admiral Frost's voice was eerily calm when she spoke again. That was your only warning, Ambassador. We have studied the Luminari for decades. We know of your subjugation disguised as benevolence. Earth does not bow. The human battleships opened fire simultaneously. Not with primitive kinetic weapons, but with technologies the Luminari had believed impossible for such a young species. Gravitational disruptors, phase-shifted plasma torpedoes, and targetable wormhole generators that bypassed the Radiant Truth's defenses by briefly shifting the weapons into another dimension before reappearing inside their shields. The diplomatic vessel shuddered, its crystalline components screaming in protest as systems failed throughout the ship. Xerxes clutched his command podium as the artificial gravity fluctuated. How, he gasped, you are children in the cosmos. Children who grew up watching the stars, Admiral Frost replied, and preparing for what we might find there. Your scouts weren't the first Luminari we encountered, Ambassador, just the first ones we allowed to report back. On the primary deck of the UES Defiance, Admiral Ileana Frost watched as the Luminari vessel's lights flickered. Decades of preparation had led to this moment. Since the first crashed Luminari scout ship had been discovered in the Atacama Desert in 2087, humanity had been quietly studying and reverse engineering the advanced technology, all while keeping their progress hidden from subsequent Luminari observation vessels. Their primary systems are failing, reported Commander Usu from Tactical. Their shields are down to 12%. Frost nodded. Target their propulsion and weapons only. We want them disabled, not destroyed. Admiral, Communications Officer Takeda interrupted. We're receiving a distress signal from the Luminari vessel. Put it through. Ambassador Xerxes appeared on screen again, his azure scales now pale and his posture less commanding. This is an outrage, he began, though the translation algorithms detected a frequency of fear in his voice. The Ascendancy will not tolerate this attack on a diplomatic. You fired first, Ambassador, Frost interrupted. But that's irrelevant now. Your ship is disabled. You have two options, surrender and accept our terms, or we will be forced to take more permanent measures. For perhaps the first time in his multi-century existence, Xerxes experienced genuine shock. No species had ever dictated terms to the Luminari. It was inconceivable, and yet, the evidence of humanity's unexpected capabilities surrounded him in the form of his crippled vessel. What terms? He managed to ask. Admiral Frost allowed a small smile. You will be taken into protective custody. Your crew will be treated according to our laws governing prisoners of war. Your vessel will be impounded for study. And you, Ambassador, will explain to us exactly how the Ascendancy operates and what its true intentions were for Earth. And if I refuse, then this conversation ends, and so does the Radiant Truth. In the tense silence that followed, Director Vera Chandra watched from her position behind Admiral Frost. As head of Earth's Xenological Intelligence Division, she had spent 30 years preparing for this confrontation. The crashed scout ship had been her first assignment as a junior analyst. Now, at 62, she was witnessing the culmination of humanity's careful planning. Admiral, she said quietly, if I may address the Ambassador. Frost nodded, stepping aside. Ambassador Xerxes, Chandra began, her voice measured. I understand this situation is unprecedented for your people, but it need not end in further violence. We've studied your culture extensively. We know the Luminari value knowledge above all else. I offer you a trade, your cooperation in exchange for understanding. Understanding of what? Xyerx asked warily. Of how a supposedly primitive species managed to defeat the mighty Luminari, Chandra replied. Wouldn't you like to know? Curiosity, the defining trait of the Luminari that had fueled their 12 millennia of dominance, flickered in Xyerx's multifaceted eyes. Even in defeat, the promise of new knowledge was irresistible. Very well, he said finally. I accept your terms, human, but know this, the Ascendancy will not accept this humiliation. When the High Council learns of this incident, they will respond with force beyond your comprehension. Admiral Frost's expression hardened. Then we'll deal with them as we've dealt with you, Ambassador. Humanity prepared for this day long before you knew we existed. Within hours, specialized boarding teams had secured the Luminari vessel. Ambassador Xyerx and his senior staff were transported to the high-security diplomatic compound beneath Mount Fuji, while xenotechnicians began the process of studying the crystalline ship systems. In the secure briefing room of the UES Defiance, Admiral Frost addressed the combined command staff of Earth's defense fleet. Today marks a turning point, she said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. For the first time, the Luminari Ascendancy has faced defeat, but this is only the beginning. Ambassador Xyerx was right about one thing. The Ascendancy will respond with overwhelming force once they realize what's happened. How long do we have? Asked Fleet Commander Malik. Based on Luminari communication protocols, we estimate 3 Earth months before they realize their diplomatic vessel isn't returning, Director Chandra answered. Perhaps another month before they can mobilize a significant military response. 4 months to prepare for war with the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, Frost said grimly. It's time to activate the Chimera Protocol. The officers around the table exchanged knowing glances. The Chimera Protocol had been Earth's most closely guarded contingency plan, a complex strategy for surviving conflict with a technologically superior opponent. Director Chandra, I want everything we can get from the Ambassador and that ship, Frost continued. Commander Wusu, distribute the captured technology specifications to all research facilities according to specialization. Fleet Commander Malik, begin mobilizing our forces across all 18 colonies, and someone get me a direct line to the Prime Director. As the officers dispersed to their duties, Frost remained staring at the tactical display showing the disabled Luminari vessel. They had achieved surprise once, but the real test was still to come. They thought they were gods, she murmured to herself, until humanity's warships arrived. Now let's make sure we're ready for what comes next. Rise of Terra. Director Vera Chandra observed Ambassador Xyerx through the one-way quantum glass. The Luminari diplomat sat in the center of the specially designed containment chamber, his azure scales dulled by captivity. For 3 weeks, he had alternated between haughty silence and condescending lectures about humanity's inevitable defeat. Today would be different. Chandra adjusted her collar and entered the chamber. Ambassador, I hope you've been treated well, she began, taking the seat across from him. Xyerx's mouth ridge flattened in what humans had learned was an expression of disdain. Your accommodations are adequate, though primitive. Has your species reconsidered its position? The Ascendancy's response fleet will arrive soon, and their mercy is not unlimited. Chandra placed a datapad on the table between them. Actually, I came to show you something we discovered in your ship's database. She activated the device, projecting a holographic star map. This is a record of resource extraction from worlds under Luminari protection. Particularly interesting is this algorithm that calculates maximum extraction rates while maintaining minimal technological advancement among subject species. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Xyerx's compound eyes. You cannot possibly understand the complexities of Ascendancy economic policy. On the contrary, Chandra replied, swiping to display another document. Your own records state quite clearly, The controlled development doctrine ensures that member species remain dependent on luminary guidance and never achieve technological parity. You're not protectors, you're parasites. Xerxes' scales rippled with agitation. The lesser species require management. Without our guidance, they would destroy themselves as your kind nearly did during your atomic age. Guidance doesn't require systematic exploitation, Chandra countered. But that's not why I'm here today. She produced another data pad. We've intercepted communications from 12 worlds in the Ascendancy. Apparently not all your lesser species are as content as you claim. Xerxes lunged forward, only to be restrained by the gravitational restraints built into his chair. Impossible! Our quantum relay communications are undetectable. Chandra smiled thinly. Perhaps to luminary technology, but humanity took a different approach to quantum entanglement. We've been monitoring your communications for decades, and making some of our own. For the first time, genuine fear registered in the ambassador's posture. What have you done? We've made friends, ambassador. Friends who have suffered under luminary rule for centuries. Friends who are ready for a change. Fleet Commander Hassani Malik stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderchild, surveying the massive shipyards in orbit around Jupiter. In the 3 months since the capture of the luminary vessel, Earth's industrial capacity had been redirected toward a single purpose: survival. "Status report," he ordered. Captain Valentina Sorakina appeared beside him, her holographic form projected from the Mars Defense Headquarters. Operation Chimera is at 78% completion. The Jupiter and Saturn shipyards have produced 400 disruptor satellites. The Neptune facility has completed 37 long-range carriers. Weapons integration of luminary technology is progressing ahead of schedule. And the special projects. Project Phoenix is operational. Project Hydra awaits final testing. Project Medusa, she hesitated. The scientists have concerns about side effects, but it works. Malik nodded grimly. And our allies. The Korvax Federation has mobilized their fleet to the designated coordinates. The Solari Underground has disrupted luminary communication relays in 6 sectors. The Drell Collective is standing by with their stealth vessels. Any sign of the luminary response fleet? Sorakina's expression darkened. Long-range scouts detected a massive quantum disturbance at the edge of the Arcturus system. Initial estimates suggest over 300 vessels, including what appears to be the Luminary Executor-class command ship. They'll reach Earth in approximately 72 hours. Malik stared at the tactical display, watching as the simulated Luminary fleet approached. Even with all their preparations, the coming battle would push humanity to its limits. "Send word to Admiral Frost," he said finally. "Tell her it's time." High Executor Corvus stood upon the command platform of the Infinite Radiance, the mightiest vessel ever created by luminary engineering. Around him, the command crew operated with the precision honed by millennia of uncontested superiority. "Status of the Vanguard," he demanded. 200 tactical vessels in forward formation," replied First Officer Tellara. 100 support ships in defensive array. The subjugation fleet follows at standard interval. Corvus gazed at the viewing portal, where the small blue-green world grew steadily larger. How dare these primitives challenge the natural order? The hubris of attacking Ambassador Xerxes and a diplomatic vessel was beyond comprehension. Such insolence demanded a response that would echo through the galaxy for millennia to come. "Any response to our demands?" "None, High Executor. Their communications remain silent." Corvus's mouth ridge twisted in contempt. Primitive fear response. They recognize their error too late. He raised his 4-digited hand dramatically. "Prepare the quantum cascade. We will cleanse their orbital defenses as a demonstration." The main weapon of the infinite radiance began to charge, drawing energy directly from the quantum substrate. It was a weapon that could rewrite the atomic structure of matter itself, capable of reducing an entire planet's surface to its component elements. "Energy build at 70%, the weapons officer reported. "Target locked on their primary defense station." Suddenly, alarms blared across the command deck. "Multiple energy signatures detected," cried the sensor operator. "Thousands of them appearing throughout the system." "Impossible," Corvus hissed. "Our scouts reported minimal defensive capabilities." The viewing portal shifted to show the space around Earth. Where there had been emptiness moments before, now thousands of small satellites orbited, each pulsing with energy signatures that the luminary sensors couldn't properly categorize. "They're using some form of quantum camouflage," First Officer Tellara reported, her voice tinged with disbelief. "The devices were there all along." Before Corvus could respond, the human communication silence broke. Admiral Ileana Frost's face appeared on the command screen. "High Executor Corvus," she began without preamble, "this is your only warning. The Luminary Ascendancy's reign of exploitation ends today. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences." Corvus vibrated with rage. "You dare threaten the Ascendancy? You are insects beneath our notice. Your species will be eradicated as an example to all who would defy the natural order." Frost's expression remained impassive. "We expected that response very well." The transmission ended abruptly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, simultaneously, thousands of the satellites surrounding Earth activated, generating overlapping fields that seemed to distort space itself. "What are they doing?" Corvus demanded. They're creating a gravitational lens," Tellara replied, her voice shaking. "It's bending space around their planet." "Proceed with the attack. Fire the quantum cascade." The infinite radiance unleashed its terrible weapon, a beam of restructured reality that could unmake planets. But as it struck the gravitational lens surrounding Earth, something unexpected happened. The beam curved, following the distorted space-time, and then redirected, directly back at the Luminary fleet. "Evasive action," Corvus screamed, but it was too late. The quantum cascade struck the vanguard of the Luminary fleet, their own weapon turned against them. 30 vessels disintegrated instantly, their matter converted to energy in a blinding flash that temporarily overwhelmed the viewing systems. When the screens cleared, chaos reigned. The human defense fleet had appeared from behind their moon, using the distraction to launch a coordinated attack. Unlike the ceremonial formations the Luminari had used for millennia, the human vessels moved in unpredictable patterns, targeting command vessels with precision strikes. "Counterattack with all vessels," Corvus ordered, his composed demeanor crumbling. The Luminari fleet responded, their superior numbers beginning to tell despite the initial shock. Energy beams lanced across space, destroying dozens of human ships. But for every human vessel lost, the Terrans extracted a higher price from their attackers. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Frost watched the battle unfold. "Activate Project Hydra," she commanded. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations activated, generating artificial wormholes that allowed Earth's vessels to appear and disappear across the battlefield, striking from unexpected vectors and vanishing before the Luminari could respond effectively. "The Korvax fleet has engaged from the rear," reported Commander Usu. "The Luminari forces are being squeezed from both sides." Frost nodded grimly, and Ambassador Zyarks. Director Chandra's voice came through the comm. "Ready on your command, Admiral." "Do it." Ambassador Zyarks stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, surrounded by armed guards but free of restraints. He watched in horror as the mighty Luminary fleet faltered against the combined forces of humanity and their unlikely allies. "This is impossible," he whispered. "We are the Luminari. We have ruled for 12,000 years." "You've exploited for 12,000 years," Director Chandra corrected beside him. "And now it ends." A communications officer approached. "We have an open channel to the infinite radiance, ma'am." Admiral Frost, standing at the command console, nodded to Zyarks. "Tell them, Ambassador. Tell them what happens if they continue this attack." Zyarks's scales had faded to a sickly pale blue. "They won't believe me. They'll think I've been coerced." "Then we'll have to convince them," Frost replied coldly. Show them Project Medusa. On the tactical display, a small formation of human vessels moved into position near one of the largest Luminari battleships. They deployed devices that attached to the crystalline hull, pulsing with energy. Within moments, the crystalline structure began to transform, turning opaque and brittle. Targeted nanites, Chandra explained to the horrified ambassador. Designed specifically to restructure Luminari crystalline technology at the molecular level, one deployment can render an entire battleship inert in minutes. You're destroying 12 millennia of art and science, Xyerx protested weakly. No, Frost countered. We're ending 12 millennia of subjugation. Now make your choice, ambassador. Help us end this with minimal bloodshed, or watch as your entire fleet is dismantled piece by piece. With trembling limbs, Xyerx approached the communications station. The face of High Executor Corvus appeared, his scales flushed dark with rage. Traitor, he spat when he saw Xyerx. You collude with these primitives. Listen to me, Corvus, Xyerx replied, forcing authority into his voice. The humans possess technology beyond our understanding. They can redirect our weapons, appear anywhere in the battlefield through artificial wormholes, and their nanites can reduce our vessels to dust. This is a battle we cannot win. Luminari do not surrender. Then Luminari will perish, Xyerx said simply. And with us the legacy of 12,000 years. Is your pride worth that price? Silence fell across the communication channel. In the background, alarms could be heard blaring on the infinite radiance. High Executor, Admiral Frost stepped forward. I offer terms. Withdraw your fleet. Acknowledge the independence of Earth and our colonies. Release all species under ascendancy control to determine their own futures. In exchange, we share our technological advances with you as equals, not subjects. Corvus's compound eyes bulged with indignation. You dictate terms to the Luminari. I offer survival, Frost corrected. Choose quickly. 6 months later, Admiral Ileana Frost stood in the Great Hall of Geneva as representatives from 27 formerly subjugated species signed the Treaty of Sol, establishing the Terran Alliance, a cooperative of free worlds dedicated to mutual defense and technological exchange. Did you ever imagine this outcome? Director Chandra asked quietly, standing beside her old friend. Frost watched as the Korvax ambassador with its crystalline exoskeleton exchanged formal greetings with the methane-breathing Drell representative. Not like this, she admitted. We prepared for survival, not victory, not revolution. And yet here we are, Chandra mused. The Luminari ascendancy collapsed under its own weight once their myth of invincibility was shattered. 12,000 years of dominance undone in 6 months. Not entirely undone, Frost cautioned. There are still hardliners among them refusing to accept the new reality. This peace is fragile. But it is peace, Chandra insisted. For the first time in millennia, species across the galaxy determine their own destinies. Across the hall, Ambassador Xyerx, now representing the Luminari Reformation Council, approached with a formal bow. His scales had regained some of their luster during the diplomatic proceedings. Admiral Frost, he acknowledged, the final treaties have been ratified by the Council. The age of the ascendancy is officially over. And how does it feel, Ambassador, to be an equal rather than a superior? Frost asked. Xyerx considered the question seriously, his compound eyes taking in the diverse gathering of species cooperating as peers. Humbling, he admitted finally. But also liberating. The burden of believing oneself infallible is heavier than I realized. Frost nodded in understanding. We humans learned that lesson centuries ago, usually the hard way. Perhaps that is why your species succeeded where others failed, Xyerx mused. You never forgot you were fallible. As the signing ceremony concluded, Fleet Commander Malik joined them, his formal uniform adorned with the new insignia of the Terran Alliance Defense Force. The last of the Luminari hardliners have retreated beyond the Sagittarius Arm, he reported. And our allies in the former Ascendancy territories report stable transitions to self-governance. And our defenses, Frost inquired. Project Phoenix satellites have been deployed to all Alliance worlds, Malik confirmed. The technology exchange program is proceeding according to schedule. Frost gazed out the vast windows at the night sky, where stars twinkled with promise rather than threat. They thought they were gods, she murmured, until humanity's warships arrived. But we must remember we are not gods either. No, Chandra agreed, following her gaze. Just humans doing what humans have always done best. And what's that? Asked Zyurx curiously. Frost smiled slightly. Surviving, adapting, and occasionally rewriting the rules of the game. As the delegates dispersed to the reception that would formally celebrate the new alliance, Frost remained momentarily alone, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond known space, other civilizations waited to be discovered. Other challenges would arise. But for now, humanity had secured not just its survival, but its place in a galaxy suddenly full of possibilities. The Terran Alliance was born, not from conquest, but from liberation. And that, Frost reflected, made all the difference.